Can everybody hear me out there? In the back, can you hear me okay? Okay. We're going to get going here in just a few seconds, so if everybody can take their seats. To introduce myself, I'm Brennan Arton. I'm the current president of the Highland Neighborhood Association. Thank you. We'd like to welcome everyone to our Belleville Mayor and Ward 7 Alderperson debate. We've been holding this debate forum for many years as an association, and by the looks of things, this is our most well-attended event yet, so we appreciate everybody coming out for that. And thank you for also being patient with, it looks like we were worried about seating. It looks like we do have enough, so we're in for a good event. I do want to extend a thank you to all our attendees and debaters for the evening. Starting off, we're going to start with the mayor debate, and in alphabetical order, our debaters are Mayor Mark Eckert, current Ward 7 Alderman Phil Elmore, and current Ward 5 Alderman Joseph Hayden. Additionally, our debaters for the Ward 7 Alderperson debate are here. Again, in alphabetical order, we have Trenton Galletti and Victoria Wygant. Again, we'd like to welcome all our debaters and thank you for your generosity of your time. And a big thank you is in order for Douglas Elementary School. They set all this up, they put everything, the table set up, the chair set up, so we can't thank them enough. They've been a very generous neighbor to us through the years, and again are tonight. Briefly, I'm going to just kind of hit on the events for this evening. Again, like I said, we're going to start with the mayor debate, and then after a short recess, we'll turn it over to our Ward 7 Alderperson debate. Our moderator for the evening is not myself, but our much more public speaker on the board, Jim Bryant, who's sitting behind me. Jim is our current board secretary and also our past president, and will do a fine job tonight. So we thank Jim for his efforts. And real quickly, we'll get this thing started. I do have some short neighborhood announcements. We have our upcoming Easter egg hunt. I know many of you have been to the Easter egg hunt in the past, but our Highland Neighborhood Association Easter egg hunt is scheduled for March 23rd this year. It's a Saturday at 1 p.m. and as always, it's at East End Park. So we hope you can all attend that event. And we do have all our board members in the front row, and the front right in front of me here. And as an association, we don't ask much. We have dues payment of $10 for the year is all our dues we ask. And I just would like to ask if you haven't paid your dues this year, if you could keep that in the back of your mind. And if you do want to pay them tonight, you can see any of all our people in the front today. And this Walt somewhere. And Walt Ortman will be taking any cash and checks if you want to see him. He's our financial chair for the evening. So, and with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Jim Bryant, and he'll go over the rules for the evening. And one quick reminder: please do silence all your cell phones. And if we should have a cell phone call come in, we ask that you can take it outside. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jim Bryant.
Okay, I know that you don't want to listen to Brennan, you don't want to listen to me, you came to listen to the candidates and to see what they have to say, so we want to get right into that. Let me just review with you the rules that we've shared with the candidates when we invited them, and we've gone over with them again tonight. They drew numbers a while ago, and that determines their speaking order for the initial presentations. They will have 5 minutes to make a presentation. Following that, we will entertain questions from the audience. When you ask questions from the audience, and I'll remind you of this again in a few minutes, but we're going to ask that you raise your hand when I recognize you. If you would stand and ask your question, we'll try to repeat that question to be sure everyone understood it, and the candidates will have 2 minutes apiece to answer that question. When you ask questions, we ask that they be questions that all the candidates equally could answer. No question that attacks a specific candidate or a question that just one of the three candidates can answer. We also ask that when you ask questions, that they be questions that are general in nature. I know that it's really important to each one of us about the pothole in front of our house, but don't ask what they're going to do about that. If you want to know about potholes, you could say, what do you think, what were your plans for the streets, or something on a more general nature. And then following the question period, each candidate will have 3 minutes to make a summation. So I believe that we're ready for that. We have a timekeeper up front, Donna, and she has nice bright numbers that signs that she's going to hold up at the appropriate time, and we'll try to keep our candidates on the clock. As I say, they drew numbers before we began. Ward 7 Alderman Phil Elmore drew number 1. Mayor Mark Eckert drew number 2. And Ward 5 Alderman Joseph Hayden drew number 3. So that will be the initial order as they make their presentation. So, Mr. Elmore, would you speak up to that podium?
Now, is that better? All right. Good evening, and I want to thank the Highland Neighborhood Association as well and Douglas School. I think this is great. I've really been looking forward to it. And I've got some goals that I put on myself for tonight. I want to, of course, answer your questions. I want to explain to you why I'm running for mayor and hopefully hit on some solutions. First off, why am I running for mayor? I think that's my obvious question. That's what a lot of you folks ask me. I knock on your door. Why would you run for mayor? Why are you doing this to yourself? Well, it's easy to say that we love the city. All three of us obviously love the city. Okay? So we can move on from that one. I've loved being your 7th Ward Alderman since 2009. We've done some great things together. We started 8 neighborhood watch groups together. I've been a proud member of the City Council. I've enjoyed the time on the City Council. It was different my first 2 years versus my last 2 years. But I've really enjoyed it, and that has spurred me on to taking the next step. I know that there are things that we could be doing better in Belleville. I know there are because I've tried to talk about them, I've tried to bring them up, and sometimes we are able to get things moving along. Sometimes we're not. That is part of why I want to move on to the next step. The things that I think we can do better. Let's dive right into them. I think you're going to hear a lot tonight about police. We could probably all agree that we'd all love to see more police. Neighborhood safety has been a #1 concern of mine since before I was an alderman. Neighborhood safety is something that I committed myself when I created the Tour de Belleville. It was about neighborhood safety, improving neighborhood safety. So how are we going to increase the police department? We've already explained to the public many times that it simply at this time is extremely difficult to afford more police officers. Unfortunately, we have not even added a police officer in many years. And that's unfortunate. So we've got to start thinking outside of the box. And I'm ready to bring those ideas, and they start with surveillance cameras. This is an idea that can be used, and it goes back to technology. You've all heard me talk about technology for a long time. I'm not talking about a camera aimed at somebody's front door. I'm talking about a camera aimed down the street. Well, we can have video footage of kids checking for unlocked cars, and then they become the next kind of criminal, then they take a step farther, next thing you know, they're home burglars. If we can have surveillance cameras in these neighborhoods this could be very effective in fighting crime and improving the neighborhood safety. So police and neighborhood safety, I believe you're going to hear, is going to be a number one concern, not only of all of yours, of all of ours. So let's move on to another one. We have an issue right now at City Council. If you haven't been to a City Council meeting, you'll see at times a complete lack of respect. And it's very unfortunate. It's heartbreaking, is what it comes down to it. When we have this lack of respect, and we start to have the secrecy issues that we talked about, then the secrecy issues start to develop into just downright hate. And that is not what we should be about. This is one of the reasons why I've said I'm not going to form this grand party of 8 people to go in and just disagree with whatever's being talked about. I want to work together, work across the aisle. This has got to be a teamwork effort. And it can be a teamwork effort. I know it can be because I've been doing it for the last 4 years. We can have a teamwork mentality. I understand that everybody would like to have, or each of my opponents would love to have 16 aldermen, all of their party, all doing the same thing. That's not working for the city of Belleville. We have got to have a well-rounded group of ideas coming in from everybody. And the only way to do that is to encourage an independent thinking. Okay? And I'm not talking about, if he said that, I'm going to disagree just because they're not my party. I'm talking about looking at the solution, taking the solution for what it is, and trying to decipher through it, regardless of who it's coming from. We do not need to have obstructionism at City Council.
Thank you, Mr. Elmore. Number 2, Eric.
Good evening. I too want to thank the Island Neighborhood Association and our friends at Douglas School. It's always great when we can allow the candidates to express their views and ask them questions. I'm going to talk just a minute for those I don't know real well in here. My name is Mark Eckert, and I have had the privilege to serve as mayor for 8 years now. Prior to that, I was alderman for 8 years, in Ward 5. During that time, I've been very happy to be a part of a lot of progress. Still have many challenges. In the last 8 years, we've built a new firehouse, engine house number 4. We've completely taken the downtown streetscape and totally revamped it, totally revitalized our downtown with a lot of people working together to do that. We've worked every day with Lindenwood University to make that a new shining star here in Belleville. And it's growing great guns and it's got potential that's unlimited. It's raised the property values in the central part of the city. We built 2 new shopping centers. We have worked hard, and I'm proud, working with every day the men and women of Scott Air Force Base. Scott Air Force Base is an extremely important part of the city of Belleville's history and of our future. And as mayor, it is the mayor's job and the city's job to be an integral supporter, listener, and partner with that base. Scott Air Force Base is a $3 billion economic engine to this region. And we must be working as we are now already to work together with other cities and other agencies in case there is another round of BRAC as they are talking. So that's another part of the mayor's job that I'm proud of the way we work at it, and it's very important. My wife and I've lived in Belleville 57 years, and my wife Rita and I have been married soon to be 27 years. We have 4 children. The youngest one's 15 yesterday, and the oldest one, my oldest son, turned 35 on Valentine's Day, and he's currently serving in Afghanistan as a trauma surgeon in the Army. We have a daughter that's in Germany right now, teaching English to German kids, and we have one that's here tonight who I'm proud to say is a union carpenter. We're like all of you. We have children. They all have education challenges. They all have growing up in this city. And we're proud of the parks and the trails we've been building so that they're family friendly. We're excited about the growth in Belleville. there's a lot that's been accomplished and there's a lot more to do. I agree crime is a concern. I believe we've made good choices. I'm proud of Chief Clay and the command staff of the police department. We're working very hard to solve problems. We have hired one new police officer since I've been mayor, and we put 6 more back on the street by taking that person out of the West End police station just sitting there and putting them back in that district in the West End. So that's 7 cops that have been added really since this administration. Is that enough? No, it's never enough. But we've got to be able to pay them. We're one of the few cities during this terrible economy that we've been facing that has not laid off policemen and firemen. And I'm proud of that. We've got a lot of work to do. The neighborhood partnerships that's been started is a fantastic program. I encourage, as this group is already doing so, to get involved and build those partnerships, build those collaborative efforts. We want to continue to work with all of you. We started the newsletter during this administration to get the word out quarterly. We've opened up city government in many ways. We'll have soon, we're working through a lot of challenges, a new website. And it's, technology is wonderful. We've hired the first IT director since I've been mayor. We have just now, we're in the process of entering into an agreement, a partnership with St. Clair County to put in a new police communication or records keeping system for our police department, which will be a great efficiency. And you're soon going to hear about tomorrow night again, another meeting, and we're getting closer to proposing and hopefully passing a multi-crime-free housing ordinance. I stood for the occupancy permit that was passed a couple weeks ago, and I stand behind that because those things are important to the city. I'm running for a 3rd term. I appreciate the opportunity to be mayor. I'm asking for your consideration and your vote, and ask you to look at the record. If you want to know what someone's done, look at what they're going to do. Look at what they've already done. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. Joe? Joseph Hayden.
Good evening, everybody. And I too want to thank the Neighborhood Association. I believe it's not only the Highland, but isn't the Clinton Association helping this, and as well as the Douglas School folks to have us here this evening. I wanted to start out speaking, ladies and gentlemen, about my qualifications and why I'm running for mayor. I do have a master's degree in public administration from Southern Illinois University of Carbondale. I have a Bachelor of Science degree, major in government and political science from SIU Evansville, with 3 minor degrees in business administration, speech communication, and philosophy. I've got 20 years of local government experience that I want to bring to the table to help the citizens of Belleville. But more so than my qualifications, I want to speak about the issues. I've put forth, along with my coalition candidates, a 6-point platform, which is based on crime, TIF, housing, budget review, transparency, and better staff and community relations. How is this put together, ladies and gentlemen? It was put together as I was going door-to-door campaigning for aldermen in 2010. And talking to the people, listening to the people, asking them, what is on your mind? And as I went door-to-door in Ward 5, crime was the #1 issue. TIF reform was the number 2 issue. And so forth. And as I saw candidates put them together, that is the platform that we worked around. And I feel safe with our 6-point platform, ladies and gentlemen, because as you're aware, in the B&D's February 17th front page news story, what do the voters care about? And it was basically everything that we had placed in our 6-point platform, with crime being #1. And I've been relentless on that issue, ladies and gentlemen. Wrote another newspaper article. This one's dated July 12, 2009. Mayor Eckert was certainly still mayor. Alderman Elmore was just taking office as an independent alderman. Police chief's wish list is growing. It talks about how we need more police, how we need more squad cars, and etc. Here we are 3 years later, and we've really, in my opinion, ladies and gentlemen, have not made any straight, towards getting that done. So we're going to have to start changing the way we plan and prioritize the way we do the budget. That is the only way we can get it done. And if we work together with the city council that has an open mind, we will do it. When I left office in '97, we had 81 police officers. Here we are today with 82. The FBI standards for a town of our size says we should have 82 to 124. We're at the bottom of that tier. We need to do better. Without a safe city, we can't have a prosperous city. Without a safe city, property values go down. When property values go down, people start looking to go elsewhere. And that's what's happening in our community. And we need to change that. And that's the sole reason why I'm running for mayor. I want to share with you, had a lady called me from the West End, it's been several months back. Senior citizen, Belleville Dutch. As a matter of fact, she even had that Dutch accent. And I went out to her house, and we got out there and sat on her front porch, and she said, Mr. Hayden, why are you running for mayor? And she said, don't give me no, I won't say exactly what she said, baloney. And I said, ma'am, I'm running for mayor because I want to walk around my block and feel safe. And that is my goal, to make my house safe, the house next to mine safe, till I get to your house, to the last house in West Main, and the last house in East Main. And that is my entire goal for this campaign. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen, for your presentations. And each of them stayed inside their time allotment. Let's see if there's any other questions. All right, let me just remind you, we're going to take questions from the audience. Each candidate will have 2 minutes. I'm going to rotate around, and they do not know yet the order that they'll be answering those questions. But each will have an opportunity to respond to every question. And so we'd like to remind you again that the questions should be general questions, not aimed at one particular candidate, but something that all three could answer. And to get started, I'd ask that you raise your hand if you have a question, and I'll recognize you and let you state your question. Question number 1. Yes, ma'am, would you stand, please? Right back there.
I would like to know what each candidate expects to do to work on the crime problem.
All right, the question is, what would each candidate do to work on the crime problem? And for the first question, I'm going to follow the same order that we had a moment ago. Mr. Elmore, Mayor Eckert, and Joe Hayes.
Okay, crime. As I touched on earlier, the surveillance cameras. But I also want to touch on another tool to fight crime would be the crime-free housing program that is just about to get introduced. Dean Hart, who is running for treasurer, has been sitting on that committee. I've gone to a meeting or two. They've made great progress. That will help the housing, and I would also be interested, and we'll be working towards a city housing court. So I'm not exactly sure which area of crime we're talking about, but if we're talking about housing crime, the crime-free housing with housing court, and occupancy permit program that we have passed, or that we're about to instill, we have got a plan that we've been working on, and the future, now it needs to move forward. We need to say, okay, this is how much we're going to invest in fighting crime. And it starts with, I truly believe, wholeheartedly, is those surveillance cameras. I would love to say, I'm going to hire 3 new police officers. I'd be blowing smoke at you folks. But we've got to do something. We've got to do something. And it can't start with those surveillance cameras. They're very attainable. We can put them on utility poles, or if we don't get Amber's permission, we put them on roll poles. They can be moved. We could have 8 cameras going in the city that could give 8 different visuals back to the police dispatch department. So it is possible. It can be done. It gets done all over. We are using some of them on private property in Belleville now. Lindenwood is already using them. This is a great program. There's no reason in the world why we should have 8 extra set of eyes checking crime-ridden areas.
Gentlemen, would it be all right with you if we just pass the mic back and forth and you stay at the table for the questions? Is that all right? I think it would save time.
And for the sake of time, I'll begin. Crime is a very serious issue. And as I stated earlier, I'm very proud of the police department and the command staff that we have. Under my administration, we have for the first time created an assistant police chief and a deputy fire chief in the fire department. That was very important for administrative support and help for the command. We worked for 2 years to get this new computer system to where the chief and everybody felt comfortable what we would be going after. What we have right now, as I just told you with the county, is excellent. It's going to help us work more efficiently. It's going to help free up officers. I've also proposed in this year's budget that we hire and begin a program for community resource officers. This will do like other communities around us, many of them, where we hire some young law enforcement students to do some of the menial tasks, to take the stolen bike reports, to go over and pick up the lunches for the prisoners, to help with parking meter possibly, and some of the other tasks so that we can keep more officers on the street doing what they need to do. Now, I want to hire more police, and as I told you before, we put 7 policemen back on the street, hired 1, and put 6 on the street by closing a man in the West End Police Station. That was important. We're going to look at this gaming revenue. I'm not saying it's the answer, but after we see what happens, I think there is a chance, if there's some steady possible new income, that we can hire another officer. The crime-free housing, multi-housing we talked about, I met today. It'll be, in fact, we interviewed with the newspaper today. They came over. It'll be proposed and shown tomorrow night. Ken Consilla's committee is going to be reviewing that. And if everything goes well, we'll be hiring 1 officer almost immediately there, adding to our crime force. There's a lot to do, but I'm proud of our police department. They solve almost everything, and I have supported them by authorizing many sweeps and many parole sweeps and many of the all hands on decks to fight crime.
That's a very good question. First things first, yes, we do have to look at the budget. I've proposed many times, even when we were going through the wheel tax challenges, let's see if there's ways that we can cut 2 to 3% of non-personnel fine funds to put more police officers on the street. But even more, I've looked at other plans and I've presented other plans. One plan that I have asked to be looked into and I believe can be implemented is to bring back and reinvigorated police auxiliary. Police auxiliary that can work with our city police, help block off parades. I can stand up at 11th Street in Maine and block off 11th Street during the Shriners Parade. Take these other volunteers to work with some of the police officers as they're assisting with downtown festivals. As you do that, ladies and gentlemen, you can free up that overtime, a lot of overtime, and start doing it. As the mayor mentioned, we've done sweeps. I think we need to do more sweeps. And that is one way that we can start doing more sweeps, is to convert that overtime into putting power patrol shifts on the streets from 7 o'clock at night to 4 o'clock in the morning. We start going from block to block and start running the riffraff out of our town. We have to set up a deterrence. Chief Clay has told us, in order to set the deterrence, we need 10 more police officers. So we're going to have to start finding a way within the budget to do $1 million, because that's what it's going to cost, $1 million, ladies and gentlemen. But we're going to have to make up our mind, which is important, and that's where leadership at the top comes, because you got to plan and prioritize in parks. Everything else we got in our city, grocery stores and everything, means nothing if the people don't feel safe and don't want to come here, and people don't want to stay here. Thank you.
We have another question.
One of the things that strikes me as a hallmark of a healthy community is a healthy and diverse business activity. We have currently a great number of empty storefronts. Companies close and then nothing comes in, they lie vacant. Are there some plans afoot to reverse these as mayor? What would each of you do to try to attack new and vital business to our communities, including retail, food, and so on?
All right, the question deals with what would each of these candidates do to bring retail into our city. Is that a good summation?
Yes.
And we're going to start this one with Mayoral.
Good question. And we have been working hard to fill some storefronts. As you know, I'm not telling you anything. The last couple of years, the economy's been terrible. But we are getting a lot of nibbles again. We've been back to the table. We are working seriously. We had 5 meetings now with a hotel. I can't tell you when we're going to get this hotel, but I believe we will. The toughest situation right now is the banking industry is not freeing up money for the hospitality industry. But we're continuing to try. We're working on a number of empty buildings. I have a meeting next week with THF. The old Walmart site is very near and dear to all of our hearts in this room. However, you understand, we had a couple deals real close before the bottom fell out of the economy, and then everything went solid. But the old Walmart store has they're still paying their lease to THF, and they got 1 more year. And until that lease runs out, they're not real hungry to go and solve that and negotiate. We have some ideals, we are working hard, and we've had a couple deals that came close. You have to make your city attractive to have business want to come here. And I was pleased when Kroger and the Ruler Food came to us and wanted to build in Belleville. That was a positive sign. Things like Lindenwood's growth is really helping us bring in new students and new people and a lot of new activity and new synergy. We're working hard. Our Economic Development Department is working very hard with the Chamber. The Chamber of Commerce and the City of Belleville have never worked better together, and we're working also on addressing some of these empty storefronts, just like we're working with Main Street downtown. Progress is being made, but there's a lot to do yet, and it's on a case-by-case basis. But I do see the economy starting to shift, and we're continuing to make ourselves very available and very interested to try to fill these places as much as possible, and as quickly as possible.
And Mr. Hayden, would you answer the next question?
If elected mayor, one of the programs that I intend to implement in place, beyond what the city is already offering, is what I would call a Belleville Business Assistance Program, BAP for short. I've seen it work in the community. I worked in Ferguson, Missouri. We got businesses that are empty and vacant down what I call the Central Western Corridor, from 6th Street up to the Lindenwood College. Some of these businesses, even if somebody wanted to move in there, ladies and gentlemen, probably don't have the proper codes up to date to do this. But yet we give TIF money to $1 billion business such as Kroger and Ruler. I think we need to go back to the start of what TIF was made to do, and that is A, to fix our roads, curbs, and streets, and B, work with our local businesses to allow them to progress. We have the ability to work with local banks and allow these businesses, as we did with the Ferguson Business Assistance Program, to get them 2 to 3% loans, 1% loans, to start their business. Work with the landlords in there and say, hey, how about, I know you want $400 rent, but what if we start this guy at $200 rent? Let's see if we can make this thing a go. And then coupled with that is a Belleville Neighborhood Improvement Program. We got empty houses, ladies and gentlemen, all through the city of Belleville, especially in my neighborhood and around there. We got to start filling those houses back up and bring people that can buy from these shops. But we got to find a way to help these people to do it. And the Belleville Neighborhood Improvement Program would allow people to get low-interest loans backed by the city of Belleville to fix up these houses and move people back in. It's time, ladies and gentlemen, if we're going to use tax increment financing, let's start doing it for the people that live here and the businesses that are local and want to make our downtown the best. Thanks.
Economic development is what we're talking about here. We do not have an economic developer. When I was just coming into office, we did not rehire an economic developer when Mr. Mayoral left. We were told there was no reason to because we don't have the money, there's no economic development going on, so we're not going to hire an economic developer. Mike Malloy went down the road and is doing a bang-up job in Fairview Heights. He was quoted in the paper as simply saying he wasn't able to have the freedom to do his job. It's very frustrating. And an economic developer isn't just about bringing new business in, we're losing businesses. I just met with one today that we're going to lose. They have tried to talk about getting incentive money, and they've tried to approach and appeal to their needs, and they're just not getting heard. So, they're probably going to leave. It is very frustrating. Economic developers will also not only bring in new business, but they can also help the businesses that are here to stay here. And that's the most frustrating part, is that we can lose a business to Lebanon because they just don't feel like they're getting listened to. So, what will we do? We will hire an economic developer to do their job, to be an economic developer. And yes, that is more money. But we will have an economic developer that will pay for itself because they will bring in more tax dollars through business. That will generate more families moving into Belleville.
Okay, question number 3. At the moment, let's proceed, and if the question comes up again, we can address it further. You've got your time. If you want to address a different answer, you can, but that means you missed the question that was asked. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. Having been at City Hall meetings for many years, what would you do to change the circus atmosphere that has been in City Hall for the last 2 years? There is no respect, there is no civility. People that sit next to you, we have Boy Scouts in City Hall. It is conduct that some of the issues could have been said outside of chambers and not in City Hall meetings, which creates the circus atmosphere. And this is what people outside town that came visiting made reference to. What would each of you do to restore civility and respect in City Hall?
The question is, what would each of the candidates do to restore respect and civility in city council meetings? And we're going to begin this with Mr. Haney.
Well, first, the mayor is in charge of the meetings. The mayor is in charge of the meetings. That's the bottom line. But as it goes to people asking questions and things like that, I would agree with the mayor. The mayor's been attacked. I've been attacked. But I do also want to state, for the record, that I think we need to be very, very careful, ladies and gentlemen, that we're also not putting in measures that limits or prohibits people's freedom of speech. The one thing that is great about this country is it's founded on freedom of speech, and people have a right to come to meetings and speak. As a matter of fact, up until 1993, the people didn't even have a chance to come to the meetings and speak. I led the ad hoc committee on agenda that created that. Before then, you could not come and speak openly. You had to go to your alderman had to go to the mayor to allow you to get permission to speak. So I'm proud that that was changed. In addition, we didn't even have an agenda. There was no public agenda. When I was an alderman back in '93, the first agenda that I got came the way it came in the packet, and I didn't realize that that was the agenda. We've since then changed that to have where everybody can see what's going on in the meetings. So I think some of the other frustration with the people coming to the meetings is the lack of the fact that we do not have the information readily available. We should be posting this stuff on the internet as soon as it's done. We should have earlier time frames for things to be submitted. So instead of the council getting the packet on Friday and Monday to respond, get it a week in advance so that people can be educated on the subjects and can come there and have a chance to talk to their alderman, which may end up lessening some of their frustration. Again, the mayor runs the meetings, and if I'm running the meetings, I will ask for decorum. Thanks.
Yes, the mayor does run the meetings. And unfortunately, for the first time in the last 2 years, I've had to actually put my gavel down and tell some people that they're about to be escorted out of the meetings because of incivility. And in the 16 years I've served on this council, I've never seen that before. That is sad. Now, I know it's America, and I know freedom of speech. I believe in it. But I also think it's very disappointing that people have come in and things have been to the point where they've already been almost staged to attack the mayor and others. We got to get back to what the school kids are doing, and that's being a community of character. And we're trying hard. We asked our basic initiative kids to come to the council meetings and read the character word of the month. And quite honestly, the last couple of months, I've been embarrassed to have those high school kids at the meetings. We can do better, and we must do better. But I can tell you, this is a new phenomenon coming in here and just raising a ruckus to be raising a ruckus. A lot of this stuff can be done by communicating ahead of time. There's not any department head. We have good people who won't answer questions and who won't try if giving considerable, giving fair notice and a chance to answer some of these things. These do not have to be great debates and take long periods of time and be heckled at a council meeting. Some of them are simple questions. So all of us need to bear down and do better. I'll do my part, but I think we've got to get back to character in each and every meeting, and we've got to work together. And I'll take the lead, that's for sure. But there's a lot of people who've been here the last 2 years, that since we've experienced this, that need to step up to the plate and agree that we're not going to be so confrontational and so mean-spirited.
Okay. Everybody spoke to that, right? You haven't spoken? You haven't, have you?
Really?
No.
Even it's simple. I agree with what both gentlemen just said, a lot of what they said. So I'm going to talk about a solution. They have become uncivil. When we have a council meeting, we are in the council meeting with an agenda. We have the agenda. We are in this room to talk about what's on the agenda. Now, we all appreciate freedom of speech, and I would never cut anybody off. And if you're stepping up to that microphone to address something on that agenda, you can virtually have as much time as you want. If you are coming up with something that's not on the agenda, as mayor, I will give you an appointment the following day with me, or the department head, or the alderman, and and you will address it publicly, you know, in a short amount of time, but the point is that it will be addressed properly the following day. I will block out a couple hours every afternoon after every council meeting for whatever needs to be discussed that was not on the agenda. That doesn't mean it wasn't important. It's important. You brought it up. But it's not on the agenda. The agenda is the issue at hand. What is on the agenda is what's supposed to be discussed. And that is the end of it. We are supposed to discuss everything that's on the agenda, and then we can talk about other things. If you want to bring up something that's not even on the agenda, then we may need to either A, answer it quickly for you, if it's a simple question, but many times they're not simple questions. The mayor's blindsided, the alderman's blindsided. Next thing you know, we've got people calling alderman names, and you know, it can go on. We were in council meeting with public participation for over an hour, and nobody stayed within any time frame or anything. Sorry.
Please stay with this. Next question. I saw you stand over here first.
I enjoy living in Belleville, and I've had the honor of spending time with both the mayor and the alderman, and both of them have done really wonderful things for us. But I have a question for all three of you. There is a hideous hole down there. It is an absolute eyesore. I would very much like to know when this is going to be cleaned up, because I have friends who come to this town and the first thing they see is the hole. We don't have a ditch like the Grand Canyon, but we have a hole.
The question is, what about the whole on Main Street?
Well, I agree with you 100%. It's hideous and I'm tired of it. But let me tell you, we won the lawsuit in January, and we, the city, were found not guilty of any liability, and we were dismissed from the lawsuit filed against us. The judge said that the actions that I had taken as mayor that day of the fire were totally within my realm of responsibility for safety. The judge did not, in that particular hearing, take action on cleaning up the hole. So now we have gone back and we have filed charges against the two owners of the property. We're hoping to be back in court quickly. The wonderful thing about America is we have a fabulous judicial system that works. But I will tell you, if you have an attorney who is good for representing you and you want to take and stretch things out, there's a lot of continuances and a lot of ways that you can investigate things and go on and on. And that's what we experienced. We had attorneys representing us, and there was people that came to me and second-guessed why we were doing things. My answer is, when the attorneys give us advice, we need to listen to the attorneys. That's why we pay them, and they went through a lot of schooling interpreting the law to learn that. I'm hopeful that the hole will be resolved soon. I actually have a lead on somebody who really would love to develop that property, but we can't force people to sell their property. I'm hopeful, but we should have it cleaned up. My goal would be to have it done before Artemis Square, and I've made that plea to the courts. But it's a matter of timing, and it's in the court's hand in St. Clair County, and we will cooperate as quickly, but it's in the owner's corner right now.
Mr. Elmore, would you address that?
And I appreciate the rules and the guidelines we have here. It is, as the mayor said, a litigation situation which some of the issues we're not completely privy on because we're not in the courtroom and things like that. So I'll do the best I can. I can tell you that, of course, everybody is frustrated with it. Being in the insurance business, I can tell you that I would never tear down a building without an owner's signature. That was a safety issue, and the mayor had the right to do what he had to do in the name of safety. But if you call me to take towing coverage off of your car insurance to lower your premium $3, you can do that over the phone, but you're going to sign for it. And I've always questioned Would a signature have saved a lot of this litigation? But he had to do what he had to do. The court said he was within his right. I'm just still frustrated with the fact that we didn't have a signature from the owner, evidently saying that we can tear this building down. Now, filling it, okay? If we've been in court, why haven't we asked the court to order the owner to fill it? If he sells it, he's got to fill it. If he builds on it, he's got to fill it. If we buy it, we've got to fill it. Somebody's got to fill it. If it's just with rock, it should be filled. It could have been filled by now, I would think. But again, I'm talking off the cuff without being in the courtroom and things like that. So my goal would have been to at least fill it in the meantime. I did ask questions about having proper fence for security. I have concerns about liability, especially when we have parades and so on and so forth. And, you know, we're not going to do that. We're not going to spend the money, is what we were told. And that's fine. The question was asked.
Mr. Hayden.
The answer to your question, in my mind, is we should have never gotten him in that position in the first place. I had a situation similar to that when I was Assistant Director of Public Works in Ferguson. We had a house that was hit on Chambers Airport Road. The person got killed in it and busted the house out into the street. There was nobody in the city staff, city manager, mayor, even our engineer was not qualified to make a decision on the safety of that building. The only person that may have been qualified at the time of the city of Belleville's incident was our city engineer, and that depends on what his expertise is. The thing that should have been done, ma'am, is that road should have been blocked off on the side of Jackson and Main Street until we could have had it secured off and properly analyzed. Now, I heard from the mayor, well, we would have to close down Main Street. Ladies and gentlemen, we close down Main Street and Illinois Street at least 16 times a year with events, so why not do it for public safety? And then we could have had the proper analysis done and contacted the owner of the building, gave him time to get it done in a proper way. We would have never had the hole there in the first place. In the meantime, we also did things that are very dangerous to our community. We tore that building down without even having a chance to do a proper police investigation. What if we would have had another fire 3 blocks down and we had some kind of serial arsonist running around in the city? Sometimes you got to stop, think, before you make a decision. And if I'm the mayor, that's the first thing I'm going to do with my staff. You cannot make decisions that are above your professional ability. And that's the way the whole should be handled. Thank you.
I'd want to rebuttal also, probably, if I was. But you may take part of your next statement and address it if you'd like, sir. Next question. Yes, ma'am.
I really like the idea of a really good economic development in the city, and I'd like to hear what the evidence has to say about it.
So we're back to the economic development question, and this time we're starting with Bill.
I didn't speak on the issue, but
Well,
I think the guidelines.
the question was asked previously about economic development, and the question, as I remember, was that our candidate said they would like some additional time, and I said if someone asked the question again, it would come back up. So, but we have a protocol that has to go through the cycle.
Economic development, again, is a two-phase job, in my estimation. First off, we have to have somebody who is working with the businesses to help maintain them staying in Belleville. And we have that issue right now, okay? That is going on right now. Then we have to also address bringing new business in. Now what we are doing currently is we wait for somebody to come to us. And if they come to us, you know, we're ready to welcome them because they should pick, you know, the largest city south of Springfield. They come to us and we do whatever we can according to what they're asking for. For example, they asked for $200,000 to tear down a building. Why don't we take the $200,000 and say this is an incentive program and we have a need for a grocery store in this area, we'll give you the $200,000 if you'll put it in this area. But in this area, you know, and it is their choice to build where they want to build. But that $200,000 could have been used on other things. Or they have incentive. Instead of them telling us what they're going to do, we can tell them, you can spend the $200,000 as an incentive to put the grocery store where we need a grocery store, based on what Belleville needs. So I hope that addresses your question a little bit more. I think that's all I have. Economic developer is going to be very high on my priority list to hire.
As I said before, I believe we need to create a Belleville Business Assistance Program that is going to work with trying to get the local buildings filled. Another important key aspect, if you're going to do economic development, you're going to have a program in place and analyze the good and bad, and is it working? My considered opinion after some recent investigations is we are not tracking the good and the bad of our economic programs. As a matter of fact, in some cases you could argue we don't even know exactly what's going on with some of those things. On top of that, it is also a key aspect of mine to have a economic developer that will be able to go out and talk the business language, bring people in. But again, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to make it clear that if we're going to give incentives, instead of bringing in the big boxes, and that we need to start focusing on filling up the empty buildings that are in the city of Belleville, all the way down East and West Main Street. And we also, as I said before, we got to find a way to get people to shop there. And that is going to be bringing in such as a business neighborhood improvement program that is going to allow people to consider investing back in Belleville, fixing up these old houses, and wanting to move into them. You can't have stores if you don't have people to shop in them. And if we work together through these programs and use our TIF money as it was set out to do, and that is to fix the blight. And I think that the vacancies in downtown and the central west end, and even on the west end of Belleville, we got the empty stores, is blight. That's where that money should be focused. If we're not going to use it to fix roads, but certainly not to people like Kroger and Ruler that are billion-dollar corporations. Thank you.
First of all, we have an economic developer. Her name is Emily Foltz, and she's fabulous. Now we need another employee in economic development, and it is in my proposed budget this year. We need a person that's going to do GIS and be a land use planner to help with zoning, so it will free up Emily more to do the things. Emily is about to complete some training that will make her only one of 40 planners certified across the nation. She is excellent, she's kind, she's aggressive, she's fair, and she is well liked by the businesses. We get rave reviews, not of that of sarcasm and know-it-allism. We get a helping hand that's working with businesses. Give an example of an empty building we worked hard on, the old Wagner Buick. We worked hard to bring in McCullough Flooring, Abbott Ambulance to that building. That building was blighted. It was affecting negatively the North Belt. We worked on that hard together, and now it's a successful win-win for everyone. There's a lot of situations like that. Folks, developers, you can't just go and make cold calls and say, come to Belleville. You have to develop relationships. Our experience with Desco at Belleville Crossing and with THF at Greenmount Commons, they had such a good experience with Belleville. We now can talk with them and work with them about dreaming now that this economy is starting to change. But the economy the last couple of years has been horrible. And it is turning, and we are poised. And as I told you earlier, we're working closer and better today with the Chamber of Commerce ever. And we're working with the local banks and businesses, and we're brainstorming, and we're on the verge of some big things. St. Paul's Home just announced a $31 million new building project. That didn't happen without a lot of meetings with them, convincing them of all the things that are going on in this city, why they should reinvest.
is, how do each of you as mayoral candidates feel about that in Belleville? And if it passes at the state level, will we choose to try to abstain from that if we can, or how will we participate?
The question is that on the state level, there's discussion about legalizing medical marijuana, and then the question to the candidates is how would they feel about that on the local level?
Decriminalization.
Decriminalization.
Because that's what other cities have been doing. I don't know their opinion.
All right. Mr. Hayden?
Well, first of all, we've talked about crime all night. The last thing that we need to do is create another thing that we need to fight crime on. So at this juncture, I would have to say that I would be against it. I'd be against it for that very reason. If other cities want to try it first and be the guinea pig, then I'll be more than glad to look at it. But quite simply, at this juncture, I don't see, with the needs and problems City of Belleville has, that's not nothing I want to take on.
We've had some very brief discussions about this topic at City Hall. I think if this moves forward in the state by chance, what I would do, what I propose to do, is sit down with some of the local experts, our medical staff, some of our counselors who deal with drugs, and certainly our police department. And I think we need to sit down and analyze, as well as talk to some of our county officials and justice people as to what the overall effects. It's impossible tonight for me to give you my final absolute feeling on such a sensitive topic, but it's something that does, if it continues to move, it's got to be initiated by the state. And I assume because we're home rule, it is. I understand it was, but since we're home rule, we should have some authority to act on it, I believe. I haven't seen the final bill. So it's something I think we would have to weigh out and look at, but we'd have to certainly hear. I would have to seek a collaborative effort of professionals to talk about, what could the pros and cons of such a decision be. And we have a lot of good quality people in this area that would gladly come and sit and brainstorm. And that would be a good then public discussion and education and public discussion. So I think you raise a very good question. I have not engaged any efforts yet, but if we see this happening with the state legislators, then I think we need to activate a number of resources and sit down and have these discussions.
It is a very good question, and I tried to think this afternoon what might I be asked tonight. I didn't see that one coming, so you win. This is totally catching me off guard. I will say that the medical profession would have to give us some guidance. I would also be interested in knowing, where are the other communities surrounding us on this subject, and that's where I would get back to communication is the key to success here. Communicating with our surrounding mayors, our surrounding police departments. It doesn't have to be just in Belleville. It would be also our other surrounding municipalities. Can we all work together on something like that and come up with an effective program under the guidance of law enforcement and the hospitals?
Next question. Yes.
What do you plan on doing about a shelter for homeless?
The question is, what would each of these candidates do regarding shelter for the homeless? And we're going to start this with Paloma.
We recently had discussion came to us from another homeless shelter figure. I'm sure you all heard about Reverend Larry Rice proposing us giving him or selling him to for $1 the YMCA. I don't believe that that was in the best interest. I have a real issue with Larry Rice's tactics, to be quite honest with you. I do see the need for homeless shelter. I do see that it is a need that's growing every day, and that has not let up at all. My church, we give out sack lunches. We have a lot of homeless people walking by my office window every day. I know it's real. I understand it's real. And we do need to come up with a solution. And when we have discussed it, the overriding statement that we get from neighbors is, yeah, we need a homeless shelter, but not in our neighborhood. And that's very frustrating. So we do have to come up with a solution. Now, I will say that we do have a lot of programs in Belleville right now. And we should be congratulating ourselves for having a lot more programs than many other communities have. But it would be great to have a homeless shelter. It just has to be in the right place, run by the right people, with the police department, law enforcement's input, and it probably should not be right downtown. That would be handy to have it for their clientele, but it probably should not be right downtown. A vacant building that could be cleaned up professionally, not by volunteers, a professional building with security for the clientele.
I'll go on record and say it should definitely not be downtown. I've been working with a number of individuals for some time, and not in the media's eyes, because these aren't the kind of things that you can solve having big front page headlines every day. People like Joe Hubbard, Bill Cream, Reverend Ed Weston, Reverend Drew Kramer, a number of other clergy and I, a group of individual lay people have met with me several times, and they continue to meet on their own, also many of these people, looking and talking and working towards solution to this serious problem. Now, I have said, and I believe for a long time, just throwing down a cot in a blanket doesn't provide anything. We need to tie this program to education, substance abuse training, drug addiction, alcohol addiction. But unfortunately right now, it's at a time when we'd love to package something up that's that meaningful, but the state of Illinois is totally broke. We continue to try. We have made some inroads. One thing I want you to know, folks, we are not ignoring the homeless situation here in Belleville as bad as it's made out to be. We have further women's crisis shelter for those women who qualify for those situations. Call for Help has a number of beds for teens and for moms and kids. Holy Angels in the Edgemont area has a homeless shelter, and there are others, and there's some others being worked on right now by the foundation in the Central area. We're going to continue to work, but we have to do the right thing, and we're going to continue. Right now, Joe Hubbard and others provide vouchers that the police department has for motel stays on these real cold nights that we are addressing and not letting people stay outside. But there's a lot more to this homeless situation, and Larry Rice coming over here and trying to take issue with Belleville, he's never ever come to a meeting, to the table, to truly try to work on solutions.
Yes, I have to share with the mayor that obviously Mr. Rice isn't addressing the problem the way it should be done. He's trying to pin the mayor down with what I would say improper tactics. So just recently he sent out a letter seeking donations, using a letter of mine without my permission, which I called him out on. And I also concur that the Turner Hall or downtown anywhere is an inappropriate place for a homeless shelter. But we do have to address what is a very, very real problem. When you've got people out on the streets, they're cold, they're hungry, they have no place to sleep, it is going to basically, not necessarily that they're criminals, but out of necessity and need, force these people that are in bad times to potentially commit a crime in order to eat or protect themselves or find a place to sleep. I certainly appreciate the efforts that the mayor has mentioned in respect to what we have going on. I also believe that we need to also, with the other agencies that the mayor has mentioned, work with our local church groups, the Catholic organizations have various different support programs that we can use as a resource. But again, this has to be, ladies and gentlemen, a unilateral approach across the
the cities of St. Clair County and Madison County to make sure that we're all working together. So if I became mayor, it would be one of my goals to sit down with these other communities and say, what can we do collectively to set up programs that are serving the communities as a whole, so we don't start transporting people to Belleville as a destination for all the homeless. Thank you.
You have another question? Yes, ma'am.
Prior to certain topic that's come up in almost every topic tonight, and I was just wondering if the candidates had an understanding of how much police officers cost per officer, how those salaries are funded, and if there's any laws associated to who's allowed to be a police officer or an auxiliary police officer.
And I was supposed to repeat that, right? The candidate said that they understood the question. It has to do with the cost of a police officer and what all that involves for the city. Is that correct?
Yes.
Basically? Okay. And we are starting with Mayor.
Police officer, the very first year we hire them, initially you have to budget $75,000. That's for salary, benefits, training, and equipment. And it goes up from there. The auxiliary police department that Alderman Hayden speaks of is really kind of a thing of the past, because the laws had changed from the Illinois State Training Board, and now you have to be sponsored or pay your own way or be sponsored to take the complete police department training. It used to be that officers could train auxiliary people while they were going, and volunteering. Now you have to be, so a person would have to give up their job and not have a job to be able to go to the state and take this training for all these weeks. It's like 8 or 10 weeks. People don't want to volunteer necessarily just to, and that's what we saw. We saw our auxiliary fade away because they didn't want to just direct traffic. And so that's one thing. The other thing about police officers, there's a lot of different costs that people don't see. When you have a police department, you have to have ammunition. You have to qualify so many times a year. We provide their weapons now because we no longer let everybody, like some departments, have all kinds of different, we have 82 sworn officers and we don't want 82 different kinds of guns out there being carried. So there's a lot of different costs today that go with arming the police and helping them do their job. The auxiliary was once wonderful, but it is not, and the chief of police has addressed this, and he will tell you that those tools are not available like they used to be in the same way. And it's a whole different, a lot of it's legal matters, litigation, liability situations for cities, and it's just a different time, and this has changed in the last few years.
Thank you, Mayor. And Joseph Hager, would you?
Well, the mayor answered the cost situation. I too, Mayor, have talked to the chief of police, and he has raised, some of the concerns that we would have to do to get a new police auxiliary back in effect. But it can be done. It can be done. And I believe, as we stated before, we're all America City. We based ourselves on the proud fact of volunteerism. And you don't know until you try, and I do believe there's numerous people out there who would be willing to work with us to go through that and get that done. And I still believe it can be a viable tool and source over time. Nothing happens overnight, ladies and gentlemen, but we can work together to get it done, and I still believe it can be an asset for us. But again, as I said, the cost of a new police officer is $75,000. A new car is around $30,000, so you're looking at $100,000 for one police officer.
Mr. Allen.
I'll address the auxiliary portion first. As Mayor Eckert was notating, there's a union issue. I'll let him cover that more in his 3-minute summation. I will tell you that as a liability insurance person who's been in the business for 27 years, I have grave concerns about auxiliary. I have grave concerns about finding the qualified volunteers to handle sensitive, delicate, sometimes unsafe situations. So those are my concerns there. The cost of the police officer, don't get caught up in that first year salary. We all know this is a long time investment. You never want to hire a police officer just out of the joy of getting to hire a police officer. You're committed for many, many years because you would never want to lay one off just because you hired one too quickly. Then you also have, I've heard the West End Police Station come up a couple times, and correct me if I'm wrong, but Chief Clay is not interested in having a West End Police Station. He was very eloquent about that at another neighborhood watch meeting. And frankly, I'm not sure that we need another building. We need more police on the streets. We need more eyes on the streets, which I'll go back to my surveillance camera idea. And I don't know that 1 or 2 police officers can give us as much visual as some of those surveillance cameras that could be possible. So I hope that answers your question. An expense of a police officer is more than just a salary. The West End Police Station is not going to solve a problem. I haven't seen any criminals check into a building and say, I'm going to commit a crime tonight, I just want to let you know that I'm going to be out there. We need more police on the streets, and that's what our focus needs to be on.
One last question, and Representative Joe
Minorities, particularly African Americans, feel disenfranchised, excluded in our city government. To the candidate, I pose this question. What would each of you do to fairly recruit minority involvement in our city government?
Again, Mr. Hayden.
Well, the last thing I want to do, sir, is go back to what I faced when I became an alderman in 1993, where the city was deeply involved in discrimination, and I got a document this big called the United States of America v. City of Belleville. And we had spent 4 years of taking care of that situation. We worked through it under Mayor Cook's administration, and I, as an alderman, we settled that issue. As a matter of fact, we had the first black police officer hired. I was there when he was sworn in, and his name is now Chief Clay. So I was proud of that aspect, as well as more women being hired, which are minorities as well. The only way you can change that situation is to make sure that when you are advertising, that you are following the EEOC rules to 100%. And as mayor of Belleville, those rules, I can assure you, will be hired. They will be hired under strict compliance with those rules.
Mr. Elmore. The question was, as candidates, what would you do about equality?
Okay. All right. I just want to make sure that we were talking about new hires, which I think is where you were going. New hires. First off, we have to have the ability to have a new hire. We have been, we spent a large part of my term on a hiring freeze, unfortunately. When we have the opportunity to hire somebody for any position, they should be screened. I don't care what color they are if they're qualified, if that's where you're going with this, Mr. Griffin. If they're qualified, they're qualified. Okay? Unfortunately, our problem isn't that we're not hiring people of a different race. The problem is we're not hiring them, unfortunately. But when we do get to hire, we will hire based on qualifications. It is just that simple. I've got another minute here to go, but I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's about the qualifications.
We take all the laws very seriously. Jim Schneider is our Director of Human Resources, and Russell Scott's our Chairman of
Police and Fire Commission, I can assure you, we follow every rule, and we advertise accordingly, and we interview fair, and we have done great things as far as being fair in hiring. And as you and I talked before, Leotis, I appointed that first African-American police chief, and I'm proud of that. And he's done a great job. And we have a command captain who's also African-American. Now, do we have a sufficient amount? I think we can always continue to look at the minorities and all the opportunities. Diversity is good for this city. My slate has a candidate on my slate, African-American. So we're going to continue. And my administration has been very, very straightforward and very open and very honest about fairness. Chief Bill Clay to appoint, and Joe pointed out that he was the first hire as a police officer, but under my administration, he rose to the ranks of assistant chief and then police chief, and he's done a great job. So I stand by that. We have been very fair. We do have a number of female officers, both on the police department and on the fire department, and we have a number of minority African Americans on the fire department and others. But first of all, too, we will continue to advertise, but we got to get people of all colors and all race to come apply for the jobs. And that was one of the conversations you and I had recently. They've got to show up and apply, okay?
Thank you, gentlemen, for your response to the questions. Thank the audience for your questions. We're going to close this portion of the program tonight by each candidate being given 3 minutes for a summation statement, and we'll follow the same order that we began. Will be Mr. Elmore, Mayor Eckert, and Joseph Hayden. You may use the podium.
I'll just stand right here if that's okay. So, anyway, I'm going to go back on a couple of other issues that I brought up that you may have read about in the paper. I announced that I was running for mayor on April 9th last year, the exact date of the election. And I did so for several reasons, because I knew that I would not have this huge slate of candidates to, as I say, go to battle. I want to work together with a teamwork mentality. One of the first things that I brought up was transparency. Now, I may not have said transparency, but this is an example of transparency. I'm being very upfront with each and every person in Belleville that I am going to research and continue to work towards the strong possibility that we may not need to elect a city treasurer. That's not an attack on Jerry Turner. Jerry Turner's a wonderful person. Known him all my life and love him to death. It's just the question of how should we best serve our community. And that's what I get back to. We have a finance director, we have a city treasurer. Mr. Turner pointed out to me we don't even have to elect a city treasurer. So I started researching it. He's right. We don't have to elect a city treasurer. The law says so. That's the law. I checked with other cities that are our size, other cities that are near us. Sometimes they have a comptroller, sometimes they have a finance director, sometimes they have just a treasurer. Very few have both. Immediately I got called political grandstanding and all kinds of things, and that's fine. I'm used to that. But my point was this: we have an auditing process, we have all of the things in order to not have to elect a city treasurer, take that salary, and make things more efficient in City Hall. And that was one of the things. And how more transparent can I be? I went right to Dean Hart and I said, look, if you're running, we're going to look at this as a possibility that you may not even be reelected. And we've got 2 years to provide the logical information to the public and let them decide. If we take 4 years, then we've got on the ballot somebody running, and at the same page on the ballot, somebody trying to vote whether or not there's going to be a treasurer. That would not be fair. So I was very upfront with Dean Hart. I was very transparent. I'm telling you right now, it is the law that we do not have to have a city treasurer, okay? And that is something that will be discussed and decided on and brought back to you within 2 years. Thank you very much. I think that you're done with me, right? Thanks.
So let me touch just for a second on the topic of the city treasurer. First of all, let me say that Mr. Turner couldn't be here tonight, but he is responsible for collecting right at $10 million worth of income for sewer and trash and other collectibles. $10 million. Plus he is responsible by statute to oversee all the pension funds. Now some cities don't have trash collection, some cities don't have a wastewater treatment plant. Some cities don't have a paid fire department and they have a much smaller police department. So those jobs, that position can be totally different. In our city, the checks and balances between those who balance the checkbook and write the checks and those who invest the money and collect the money, the checks and balances, in our opinion, are very necessary, and we believe the treasurer's position is a must. In closing here tonight, I too want to thank all of you for hosting us. I want to thank you for the good questions. One thing, and I don't know how my time will go quick here, there's always a lot of talk about, we're going to not give big boxes and that stuff, TIF money. Folks, if we didn't save Walmart from leaving Belleville, we would be missing $1.3 million of sales tax every year. That pays for a lot of policemen and firemen. If we didn't recruit Belleville Crossing and work with them and save our car dealerships, we would be losing millions of dollars a year in sales tax. Without sales tax, that is what drives. And the question a while ago, I didn't think quick enough to answer it, we can't use TIF money to hire policemen or firemen. We do stretch it as far as we can and buy a little bit of equipment. And we have remodeled the firehouse, which was legal. But folks, you have to pay it on the general fund. And the general fund is sales tax. I supported, and much as it was awkward and much as I took a beating, when we got cut by the state of Illinois $751,000 with no notice, I did support the wheel tax on a temporary basis. It didn't work. It was fought, it was resisted, it wasn't an easy thing to do, but we replaced it after listening with the 1/4% sales tax. If we don't reinstate that 1/4% sales tax when it sunsets, we will lose $1.2 million of sales tax every year. That would certainly mean, if we don't support that and have the guts to vote for that, we will have to probably, no doubt, make big cuts in the police department or close a firehouse. These are serious things. It's easy to say I'm going to reform TIF, but TIF can't fix hiring policemen and firemen. That's a total misrepresentation, and I get really aggravated when I hear all these things said about how we're going to solve all the problems, and poor TIF. TIF is not the worst thing in the world, and we've used it appropriately, and it's helped grow Belleville.
If you're referring to me, Mayor, I never said that you could hire police officers with TIF, but I do want to state back on TIF as I use my closing comments and other points. The fact of the matter is, ladies and gentlemen, TIF does raise your taxes, and TIFs do need to be reformed. We have too many of them, and right now it is eroding away the base of our general fund for property tax, and right now the general fund property tax only funds our pensions for the city of Belleville. And as pensions go up, we're going to either have to raise taxes to an extreme amount that people will almost be bankrupt, or we're going to have to find other ways to do it. And the mayor knows that. Not one penny of your property tax right now puts a police officer on the street or fixes one pothole. We have created a debt, ladies and gentlemen. Right now, every person in this room who lives in the city would have to chalk up $5,000 to get ourselves out of debt. We cannot continue on the path that we are on today. As I said before, FBI standards state that we need 82 to 124 police officers. We're at the bottom tier of that. Mr. Elmore's been on the city council for the past 3 years, Mayor's been there for 8 years, and as I pointed out in the news article, we've not made any changes to try to change that. And as I said before, ladies and gentlemen, if we don't have a safe city, we don't have a prosperous city. As I stand here tonight, I do also want to thank those that have put on this debate. I think it's been very educational. I want to appreciate the other two candidates and their participation tonight as well. But I want to remind the people tonight that I offer a 6-point platform that I think can change the city of Belleville. One thing Mr. Elmore fails to mention, though, is when he speaks about his campaign of not my 8 soldiers against your 8 soldiers. It's not my 8 soldiers against Mayor's 8 soldiers, but ladies and gentlemen, you can't just change the mayor without changing the makeup of the city council. And we have to change the makeup of the city council. And Mr. Elmore has brought no group but one candidate to the table. So I think you're fooling yourself to think if you become mayor, you're going to reach across the table and the GGP, Alderman, and block voting are going to welcome you with open arms. We're at a T, folks, in the road. We can continue to muddle forward, or we can change directions and start looking and working together to improve the city of Belleville. I believe I have the education and experience to do it. On July 16th, when I announced my candidacy, I said you were your strongest and you're willing to ask for help. I'm here tonight to ask for your help, and together we can collectively work together, change direction, bring new people in, new blood, fresh ideas, open government, open transparency, and improve Belleville for the better. Thank you.
Before I ask you to express your appreciation to each of these candidates for coming, I would like to remind you that listening to all of this does absolutely no good unless you come back to this building or some other building in April and cast a vote. As a people, as a nation, we're great at talking about politics, but we don't get involved and we don't vote. And then we think we can point all our fingers at everybody and tell everybody what they should have done. And so let me just encourage you, be back, vote when the time's here. And you'll have nothing to say if you haven't done that. And we just say thank you to these three for their participation.